Hi, my name is Robert. This video is designed to give you step-by-step detailed instructions on completing the task at hand. Please read the comments in the About section of this video. It has valuable information and updates. My YouTube channel has a disclaimer video that I encourage you to watch. And please like, share, and subscribe. I hope you found what you're looking for. Thank you very much for watching. In this video, I'm going to be replacing the right rear brake caliper on my Volvo 850. These brake calipers get jammed up and seized every once in a while. My guess is the primary reason is bad fluid maintenance. You should test and or replace your brake fluid every couple of years in a humid climate, maybe every 3 or 4 years in a dry climate, but they do have a tester that looks like this that you can use to see if your brake fluid needs to be replaced. Once your brake fluid gets contaminated with a certain amount of water, it's subject to corrode parts in the brake system. So do your brake fluid maintenance. Also, you can know that this brake caliper is bad one of two ways. One way is they usually howl after you remove your foot from the brake at a stop. The brake caliper piston is still pressing against one side of the rotor, and when you let your foot off the brake, it'll howl for a second or two when the car starts moving, and it is probably putting pressure on that piston and wearing that brake pad out. So you can pull the wheel off, look in there at the brake pads, see if one of the brake pads is worn down more than the other. Also, your rotor will be getting hot while you're driving. So those are kind of symptoms, real common for people to mistake that noise for other things. I've heard of people having CV axles replaced. I've heard of people having the front brake pads replaced. I've heard of people having the front calipers replaced. The sound is awkward. It resonates through the car in a weird way, and that causes people to misdiagnose it. Because I've got the experience with these cars, have driven hundreds and hundreds of thousands of miles in these cars, I can pick that up and diagnose it a little bit easier than other people. But again, when you let your foot off the brake, you'll hear a little howl and maybe feel a little grind once that pad is down. But when the pad's good, you don't feel the grind. And it's easy to misdiagnose. So this video will show you how to replace that caliper, and hopefully that'll help you stay on top of the maintenance as well. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. To replace this rear brake caliper, you have to take the wheel off. You have to take the brake line loose. That's the toughest part of the job. There's a special tool to use for that, boxed in a wrench with only one side of this nut open. You hook it over the line, you take it down. Sometimes you have to heat this line up to get this nut out of here. This nut spins on this metal line. Sometimes you have to put a lot of PB blaster on there, probably for a couple of days. Then once you get that nut loose, you either screw it right into the next caliper or you let it hang, which it will drip if you do that. It'll drip out fluid. Slowly but surely empty out the reservoir up front. So be aware of that. Then you got to take the two caliper bolts loose, slide the caliper off, compress the piston. You normally would replace the brake pads in there, so you could take these pins out if you want. Then you take this off, this holding pin. This holds the rotor onto the hub. It looks rusted, so you'll probably have to tap that off with a sledgehammer. And you see this rotor's destroyed because the caliper seized up on one or the other piston. Then you get that off of there. Release the parking brake, because the parking brake will hold the rotor onto the hub. Take that off, put the new rotor on, put the new brake pads in the caliper, put the caliper on, bolt them down. You got two 13mm nuts on the back of that, one up and one down. Secure the brake line into the caliper. Then you secure the rotor with the pin. Then you bleed this caliper, get all the air out of it. Probably at this point the brake fluid needs to be replaced, so you flush all the old fluid out of the line till it starts coming out of this bleeder pin. Bleed all the air out of it, and you're done. So that's what you got to do to replace a bad caliper. You can see I have the car sitting on the jack stand. I got the wheel off. The next thing I'm going to do is work on getting this line loose. I'm going to grab the tool for it, try to get it loose. If for some reason it tries to start stripping on me, which a lot of them do, I'm going to put a pair of vice grips on the tool, try to get it out. If it don't come out, I'm going to start braying it down with PB Blaster. If that don't get it out, I'm going to put some heat on it. But you want to be careful you don't bend this line at that connector, because that nut spins on that metal line. So let me grab the tool and get to work on getting that line loose. Instead of getting a new caliper or a rebuilt caliper, whatever, I went to the salvage yard and got a caliper there. And as you can see, I was having problems getting the nut off of that line. Since it was a salvage car, I went on ahead and just destroyed the line and took it off that way. This is the proper tool for getting those off. It's an 11 millimeter. You put it on there, you put it down over the nut, and you work that thing off like that. If for some reason it don't want to come off and it starts to strip, you could put a vice grip on it like so to keep the boxed in wrench closed, and hopefully it'll break free like that. Now if you get one out of the salvage yard like I did, you can just cut the copper or brass line off and put a socket over there and turn it out with a socket. But let me see if I can get this loose here, and then I'll work on getting this one loose. It did break loose pretty easy with the vice grip on there. I could go ahead and turn that off of there and then work on the one that's on the car, get that one loose so I can swap these out. Now this has worn brake pads. I'm gonna look at the pads that's on that, but they're probably worn or destroyed as well. And I could check my box to see if I have some new brake pads. I'm not replacing the rotor at this moment, so I'm not really concerned about having a new brake pad on that, but that's where I'm at. It's best to have all this stuff new. One side of all of this stuff new just to do the caliper is about 110 bucks. And that did come loose. So I'm going to work it loose back and forth and then take it loose and make sure you don't mess up the line. So work that thing so it turns on that line and then work it out of that caliper. But you don't want to get that line twisted. Spin it around a few times, brush the dirt off of it and the rust off of it, and spray it with PB Blast or whatever. Just want to make sure that nut spins on that line and it doesn't damage the line. You want to brush the dirt from around there before you pull that out. You do not want dirt falling down in there. I'm about to have this out. If you push these pads in and push the pistons in, you'll probably get fluid out of there. So you want to make sure that both pistons move easily. You don't want to put a caliper in there that ain't good. You could push on those pistons and make sure they go in, and fluid, like I said, will likely come out. You could also do that with a C-clamp or a caliper spreader. So let me go ahead and pull this screw out. Then I'm going to unturn that and turn that into there so I don't lose much fluid. And then I'm going to get this rotor off. Or I could just put the caliper on, or get this caliper off, put the rotor on. Since I got that loose, as you can see it's starting to leak, I'm going to take those caliper bolts loose. They're 13 millimeter. And then take that caliper loose. Then unscrew that and screw that line into this caliper. I actually had to lay on the ground behind here and get that screw started in there. Before I tried to put the screw on there, I kept turning that nut around on that line so it would spin as freely as possible. Then I put it over the hole and trying to get it started by hand with my fingertips. I got it started, then I started turning it in with a little wrench. As you can see, I have a drip pan under here catching fluid that would leak out onto the ground. And that's where I dropped this other caliper. And you see The outer pad is the one that's worn out. That's probably the piston that's stuck. This inner pad looks good. I don't remember replacing these pads, but I may have. But you can see that the well, I'm gonna put a C-clamp on there to see which one is stuck. Anyway, it could be the inner one could be stuck. That's why the pad's not worn down. So I got that suspended like that. I'm going to work on these parking brakes. I removed the pads, and both of these pads are in better shape than the pads on that other calipers. However, they do not have the anti-squeal directional shims in there. So let me see if this one has them. If not, I'll check my parts bin, see if I have a set, and get these shims put on. They still have wear bars in those. Those are probably gone. Let me pull them out. Well, surprising, one of these pads has that shim on there. The other one doesn't. Why would they put one on there and lose the other one? Let me go get my grease. See, they don't have any wear bar in them. Those pads are lower than these pads I got over here. See, the meat on that pad is more than the meat on these pads. Anyway, let me go get my grease. And I'm going to see if these caliper pistons will collapse. Make sure they work. It's going in. That one works. And that one works better. So, not as easy as I'd like it, but it does work. Let me get the pads in here, get some grease in here, and put this stuff together. Got all the old brake fluid out of the line from the reservoir down to this caliper. Stuff is supposed to be clear. Unless it's the green type, that stuff is not clear. So, got to get the rest of that brake fluid out when I get to the other side. I'm done with this wheel and caliper and parking brake. I'm going to put the wheel on here and go to the other side and check that parking brake. If you feel that this information was useful, please like it and share it with your social media friends. You can subscribe to my channel so that you will get notifications of future videos that I post. You can follow me on Twitter, and if you need to contact me directly, please visit my website. And if you have any questions, leave them below, and someone or myself will reply to them. Again, thank you very much for watching.